Father, I give you honor and I give you glory, O God. I thank you for this day. I thank you for the opportunity to hear from you, O God, and the opportunity to share from your word. I pray that you fill me, O God, with your Holy Spirit. Empty me of me, that there be more of you and less of me. I pray, O God, that you speak to our hearts today and minister to us in a special way. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, I want to talk to you guys today a little bit about the story of Naomi. A story that begins in darkness and ends with light. I want to title this message that I have for you guys today, Trust His Plan. 3 simple words, trust His plan. I'm going to further break the message up into 4 parts, or 4 phases. Destruction, desolation, redemption, and restoration. The story of Naomi begins in the beginning of Ruth. It begins in Ruth chapter 1, and the first few lines from about the first one to the 7th one is just destruction. It's just all about how her life just crumbled. It doesn't say much about how her life was before. It just brings you to the point of where she's at, where everything, how she lost everything. And it began when they decided to leave Bethlehem and move to Moab. Bethlehem was the promised land. This was the Israelite family. They were living in the promised land. They were living in a land where God had brought them to. But there was a famine in Bethlehem, which is really ironic because Bethlehem means house of bread. But there was no bread anymore. And people began to be hungry. And they began, I think, they were hungry because once again the Israelite people had become unfaithful to God again. Once again they were doing their own thing, because the book that precedes Ruth is Judges, and Judges 21:25 tells us, in those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did that which was right in their own eyes. And so once again they were falling away from God, and God sent his judgment. Just like we're here again. It's a cycle. We're here again. We're departing from God, and once again he'll send his judgment. And like my husband said, it is time to pray. It is time for us as believers to be awake again. We need to be aware of what is going on around us and pray like never before. So, in the beginning, Naomi and her husband and her 2 sons leave Bethlehem. They leave the house of bread because there was no bread anymore, and they decide to go to a place called Moab. They decide to go to Moab because obviously they're thinking, well, we'll be fed here, this will be a better life for us. And they believe that they could do a better job of taking care of themselves than God could. So they leave the promised land and they go out of God's will and they start doing their own thing. And how many of you know when you step out of God's will and you do your own thing, that there's nothing at the end of that road but death and destruction?
Amen. Hallelujah.
So they find themselves, I feel like they went from the exact opposite. You went from a perfect place to an imperfect place. You went from good to bad. Could they not find a place that was like in between? But then again, that's how we are. We don't, when we decide to make the choices for ourselves about what's good for us, it's never good. They went to Moab, a pagan city. Pagan meaning that they served all kinds of other gods except the God of Israel. They did idol worship. They lived very sinfully. So here, these people, these chosen people, chosen by God, decided, let's go here because it's not working out here where God has us. God is not working for us right now. Let's do our own thing. So they stepped out of his will and they stepped out of his favor. And it tells us that her husband dies eventually. Naomi's husband dies eventually. Her 2 sons marry, but they die. They didn't even have any offspring. They just died. And now here she is in a foreign land, nobody she loves, And she's not even there with her God, because her God didn't even send her there. So there she is feeling desperate and alone, and I'm pretty sure she's at this point thinking to herself, what have I done? What have I done? And most importantly, she's probably putting her fist to the sky like, why God, why? Because as a woman, my family is my most prized possession. And I think as for other women too, your family, your kids, your husband, it's what you treasure the most, and you lose that. And you begin to question God, why? And I believe that she was like, God, why? But I've learned that asking God why doesn't help any. It doesn't help the situation any. But asking him what helps so much more. What do you want from me right now, God? What do you want to show me right now? What is it that you're saying to me? I've also learned that instead of questioning, sometimes we need to be listening. Because he's speaking, but we're talking too. It's impossible to hear when you're talking. Sometimes you need to be listening. And oftentimes when we feel like life deals us a bad hand, we say God did it. And she was saying that in the verses that I read to begin, in verses 20, 21, she believed that it was God who did it. Sometimes God allows certain things to happen due to our disobedience. Same with the famine. Certain things happen due to our disobedience, and God allows it to happen. He allows us to go through a period where we can come to our senses, I call it. It's a time of getting your life together, basically, because you went off the path. It's time to get your life together. Certain things happen and you realize, okay, I made a detour, but I need to come back on track now. Because all of this that's going on, it's not natural. I need to come back on track because it's more spiritual than anything else. But at the low times in our lives is when the enemy comes in. He comes in because you're already down. So why not kick you when you're down? So, she's lost everything. And when you suffer such great loss, your joy, you lose your joy with that. You lose your hope. I think she lost her faith. I know she lost her faith. She lost her faith in the God of Israel. She lost her faith in the God who was her God. Because she said that. She said that in the verse 21. She said, why do you call me that? The Almighty has turned against me. She believed that God was against her. She believed that God was not for her anymore. And the enemy comes in at that time and he says to you, at your lowest point, he says to you, you're nothing. You see, you're nothing. You're never going to be anything. That's why you're here. He tells you, there's nothing for you. And then he just puts in the dagger and he says, why don't you give up? Why don't you give up? If God is a God of hope, the enemy is the master of hopelessness. And when he gets that little opportunity to come in, he's not shy. He comes in and he just floods your mind. And this is why we always have to keep our mind renewed and keep our mind in one with the Spirit, because the enemy, he just waits. We slip up and we don't even have to fall. We can just trip. And he comes in and he's ready. And he's ready to take you out. So we always have to be vigilant. We have to be watchful. And at this time, it's her lowest time, and I feel like that's when she probably thought to herself, you know what? Got my hands up, I just give up. What's the point of living anymore? All that I have lived for is gone. But that too in itself shows that when you aren't living for God, your priorities aren't right. Your priorities aren't right. It's not supposed to matter what you lose, as long as you don't lose him. Amen. And so she couldn't see though. She couldn't see that because remember, she had already gone out of his will. She was not in that place. She was not in that place to see that even though she had suffered all that great loss, that God was still able. He was still able to restore. She couldn't see that then, at that time, because she was in such a dark place. She was in such a dark place. But God wouldn't leave her there. And that's what I love about God. He wouldn't leave us there. And he didn't leave her there. She decided to go back home. She had heard, because the verses tell us, she had heard that there was bread in her land again. So she left before because there was no bread, there was a famine, they were hungry, they were struggling. So they left because they were thinking that it would be a better life. But once again, I said, when you step out of God's will, you step out of his favor. So even though times might be tough or times might be rough, as long as you're in his will, his favor will always care for you. His favor will always provide for you.
Amen. Hallelujah.
So,
thank you, Jesus.
She decides to go back home. And a little side note, something that I really, really love is that when she decided to return home, for whatever reason, I don't think it was for the bread. I think it was just because she was going back home to die. Because it was so much darkness in her. There was so much hopelessness. I think she just decided, I want to die here in this strange land. These people are probably not going to bury me because they don't even really know me. I want to go back home to my land and let me just die there. She was hopeful, but I don't think it was hopeful to reconcile with God. It was more like hopeful to die. Let me just go. Let me just make it home and die. You know that kind of, sometimes we get in like a pity party for ourselves when we're going through a hard time. We kind of, oh, poor me, and we kind of, I think that was her. She was in a serious mode of pity, of self-pity. Poor me, why me? And that's just what was going on with her. But she decided to go home. And what I love is that she knew the way. That's what I love. She knew the way. It came across to me kind of like the prodigal son. When he left his father's home, and he went and he did his own thing and he lived his own way, and then he ended up in a pig pen. Kind of like her, she ended up in a land full of sin, far away from God. He ended up in a pig pen, far away from his home. And when he came to his senses, he knew it was time to go home, but he knew the way home. And I just love that. Even with her, she got there. Her husband brought her there. Many, many years ago. It's not an easy journey. It's not like we have now. We didn't have GPS. They didn't even really have roads. They're climbing up mountains and going little paths. And she's a woman. This is a dangerous time. And usually, of course, in those times, women were led by men. But she knew her way home, and that kind of captured my heart. And it's like us too. When we fall away, when we take our detours, when we get distracted, we know our way home. We know our way back to the Father, and that's through Jesus.
Hallelujah.
We know how to find our way home again, and that's through Jesus. Through his forgiveness, through his mercy, through his grace, and through his love. And that's something that spoke to me when I was reading. So on her way back home, she started on her journey with her two daughters-in-law. They must have been with her for a while. Well, they were with her for a while, because the text tells us, in the beginning, it tells us that 10 years later, her son died. So they were with her for some time. When she decided to go, they decided to accompany her. When she decided to make her way back home, they were going with her. They started the journey, and then the text tells us, somewhere like verse 7, that Naomi turns to them and she says to them, why are you guys coming with me? You guys, go back to your land. Go back to where you could probably survive. Don't come with me on this journey. One, like I said, the journey was a difficult one, just to get back from Moab to Bethlehem. It was a difficult one. Sometimes the road for us back from where we are to where we need to be is a difficult one. It's a long one, but it's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for. It's worth being back in the presence and the glory of God. She told them, she said, don't come with me. I think she probably didn't even think she was going to make it, because obviously when you're dealing with such hurt and such brokenness, you're weak. You're weak in the spirit, and you're weak in your body too. I'm thinking she thought to herself, I'm not even going to make this journey. It's about a 7-day journey maybe. It's quite some miles. Of course, it's on foot. I'm thinking she's thinking, I'm not even going to make this journey. And even if I make this journey, she tells them, what do I have to offer you? I'm broken. I'm empty. She's thinking, you don't see me? Don't you see me right now? I have nothing to give you. Why don't you just go back? And that's us sometimes, even in ministry. We feel so broken, things happen to us, life knocks us around, it like knocks us upside the head, and we feel as though we don't have anything to give anybody. We don't want anybody to follow us. But you know, in our brokenness, in our most broken times, is when God can use us.
Amen.
Because in that time is
Hallelujah.
when we allow Him to be our strength.
Thank you, Jesus.
In our weakest moments, when we realize that we can't do it on our own,
Yes.
it's when He steps in and says, see,
Yes.
I
Hallelujah.
told you all along. I
Amen.
told you all along that I would be your strength.
Amen.
So after she tells them, after she pleads with them, just go. One of them, Orpah, she probably was a weak one anyways. So it's probably better that she just let her go her way, because I just don't even. So she went back, and Ruth stayed. And Ruth enters this story now. And it's funny because the book is called Ruth, but the story doesn't start with Ruth. The story starts with Naomi. And so we can't talk about Naomi's story, we can't talk about Naomi's journey without mentioning Ruth. And I love Ruth. Ruth is my favorite Bible character. She is my favorite person in the Bible because this girl was born in sin. This girl was born in a pagan land. She only knows about serving, other gods. She doesn't know about the God of Israel. She doesn't know about the one true living God. I guess until she marries Naomi's sons and she comes into that family. And maybe that's a testament too to Naomi and maybe they were still praising their God in that place. They were still believing God in that place because they were able to win at least one of their daughters-in-law to God. Because Ruth, she had to have seen something in Naomi, maybe in her better days, to want the God that Naomi had once loved, had once believed in. She had to have seen something because she would not have known God, that God, our God, otherwise. And so Ruth said, listen lady, I'm going with you. I think she was converted. Ruth was converted. She's like, there is nothing back there for me. I'm going forward with you. I don't care how hard the road is. I don't care what happens along the way. All I know is that once we're going to meet the God that you once believed in, that's where I'm headed. There's nothing back there for me.